what I practice here today is active composting. And active composting can be done either in a pile, version like this. You can do it in the bin setup. I just do a pile because I got a lot of space, and I get volunteers every now and then, so I can do this. But I would recommend, not unless you love pitchforks, I would recommend kind of breaking this up into like smaller bins, maybe a 3-bin system. This pile is constantly fed through donations, or I would say donations from a local grocery store. So all of this is just reincorporating food waste back into the soil here to be grown for the community, education workshops. And then in addition to the benefits of composting in terms of reducing waste, it also goes towards sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, because when food waste goes to the dump, it just turns into toxic waste. But when it's here incorporated into the carbon, that carbon gets trapped in the dirt and in turn into vegetables and used year after year. As long as you don't do active tilling. But with active compost, it sort of does the composting job in a very short amount of time. 3 months is the fastest I've been able to get it ready. That depends on how hot you can get it, how big your pile is, what you got growing in it. The benefits of composting is that it's very similar to the Three Sisters. It's super fluid, super diverse. Back up north, I use sheep manure and I use cardboard boxes, because back up north we don't really have like a waste problem. We don't have like food, we don't have dump trucks. You gotta get rid of your own waste. So I shred all our cardboard, all the horse manure, sheep manure, make a big old pile. And that's how mine's more like a bed, but it's still really good. I still grow things. But this pile is mainly the sunflowers, shrubs, the weeds that grow here, and food donations. And then the ones that you guys have will most likely be your like old newspapers. When you put carbon in this, or put paper or stuff like that, you just want to make sure it doesn't have any wax on it. You want to make sure that it's like try and like make it as close to regular paper as possible, like no chemicals. Yeah, no shiny, not too much heavy prints, and you don't want to use too many newspaper. That's an option. Mainly use regular cardboard, junk paper. Sometimes a lot of boxes will say like recyclable. That's one way of doing it, turning it into dirt. Compost is a nice recipe of 1 part water, 1 part browns, and 1 part greens. For this pile, the part greens is all the vegetable matter. The browns is all every now and then when we get flood irrigation, there's some like debris, just like sticks and stuff. And that's incorporated into here. And then also just like some of the plants themselves can use brown because they're very straw-like, very rough. You can use mulch if you wanted to. I shred my own cardboard, but you can use it can come from plants, or it can come straight from whatever your waste is. Just don't try and incorporate any like things onto printed tissue with them. It's what you do to packages. But active composting is a way of getting rid of I think it's one of the best ways to kind of do urban composting. One, it won't have any smell. This pile is probably dry, so don't mind how it's probably gonna. Let me see if I can open this pile. And every now and then, if the top gets all dry like this, you put that more moist and rich compost on top of it. So either way, you're gone in no time. But the benefits of active composting is, one, this doesn't have a smell. I mean, it smells like dirt, it smells like the forest. And for the most part, this will not have any pests. The only pests you'll have is, there's some roaches living in here, but they were before I came. I don't know how to get rid of them. They're just roaches, you know? But normally they don't get in your pile. Unless they're just in your area, you know? I mean, we all deal with roaches. That's kind of hard to deal with. But another thing you might deal with is ants. Every now and then this pile will have like a nest of ants move in. But if you make sure to add that 1 part water, you'll be sure to keep ants out. And then when you stir it regularly, it'll keep dogs out, it'll keep rats out, it'll keep basically anything. Because what happens is when you regularly turn this thing, you feed it water, and you give it air, it becomes a living organism. It's one, I like to think of it like sourdough. It's one big loaf of compost dough that I'm tossing back and forth, but you can move it bin per bin, and basically what that does is that you're propagating fungi and you're propagating microbes, and they eat away at all of the materials. And if you can get the pile hot enough, because when you propagate their growth, they'll tend to get this really steamy. It will kill away pathogens. It'll turn your soil compost organic, USDA grade. It'll also accelerate the decomposition process. So as is it now, you could use this like a compost, a mulch, because this is very fibrous. But if I were to keep this fluid and I wanted to keep adding to it, so that's why like this pile I keep adding to. So it won't be ready till the winter, but so if you wanted to, you can create 2 piles, get one of the size, let the other one start building up, and then that way, this is always constantly in the process of decay and turning into soil. So there's different stages of decay, I should say. But if you have 2 different bins, then you'll know exactly different bins. For this one, I have to probably really stir it up a bit and kind of like filter it a bit, kind of screen it. But you can toss it in like this now as a mulch that can go over the top, break down even further. And if you get it really hot, you don't have to keep feeding it. It gets even more like clay soil, more like potting soil. And just another thing too is you'll see in any compost pile, you'll see these little, I don't even know what to call these guys. Like, they're just these little silvery bugs, kind of like roly-polies. If your pile's healthy, you'll never really see these guys. If your pile's healthy, you really want to see them. They're just like a natural process of decay. If you're seeing other types of bugs, like some crazier things, your pile's gone spoiled, you put too much water. If you're seeing ants, your pile's gone dry. You didn't put enough water. If your pile stinks and is insane, you got too many vegetables in it, you need more browns. If you got too many browns, you need some more water. If you got rats living in this, you're not stirring it. That's sort of like the troubleshooting to this, is making sure you keep your formula set. The good news is there's no like, oh, I messed up. Even a spoiled pile can be brought back. You just have to do all the stirring. But that's active composting. It's propagating those aerobic bacteria and fungi in order to break down this. And all of this gets then reincorporated. The way I like to think of composting is sort of like, it's a biodigester, and it's a way of any waste from your house, from the garden, goes back into the soil. I love being able to, make a nice stew, chop off the ends of the carrots, put it into the compost, grow some carrots again, and it makes me feel good knowing I can keep that process going. And at the same time, helping to fight carbon emissions. But this is just one methodology. There's another style that's practiced here as well, where they they have a bin system, but they don't stir theirs, so there's a more pungent smell, but Terry likes it. Terry likes to keep his piles smelly because he wants people to know what he's up to. But I don't think you guys want that in your backyard. So if you do a bin system, just stirring it at least once a week, once a month, any way to get some air into that will kind of help prevent it from kind of like, what ends up happening if you don't stir it is you'll still get decay, you'll still be nutritious. All these raised beds are very, very nutritious, and they have really good produce coming from it. But what they're propagating is anaerobic bacteria without oxygen. And they just have a more pungent smell to them, and can lead to some other deaths. And so active composting, if you're interested. This can be done at this scale, it can be done in that, it can be done in that bucket, it can be done in, I thought there was another bucket there, but it can be done at any level. And it can even be done where you dig a hole in the ground and you have like a covering over it. And it can even be done in your raised bed. Say you start a raised bed up and you're starting a raised bed. You just have that big old plot and you start tossing vegetables into it and you just kind of build up your soil that way. Or you can build up all of those decaying vegetables at the bottom and cover it over with some other soil. And mixing your soil. I think this is the best way to go about building up soil amendment. In addition to beans, because back up north, we don't have options to have a lot of water. It's kind of hard to have my pile keep moist, but I know the benefits of making sure that the soil gets the proper nutrients to it. But it's all DIY. Whatever you have access to, you build it based off of that.
How long does it usually take you, like I guess length of time with this pile? Like how long? When did you start it?
This pile, I started in March. This is when my pile started. And so it's gone from, as you can see, there's different levels. It's like produce that's just straight dry. There's whole fruit still there, and now it's gotten to where it's like this. And I don't know if you guys can tell. This is hot. this is like maybe like 50 maybe 100 degrees right now, but you can get it up to about 200 degrees. You can get it to steamy. And what you're propagating, you really know when you're getting it right, is when you start to see this white dot here. I don't know if you can kind of see it all on the stuff. Yeah, it loves fibrous material. So if you put cardboard in this, that's where it'll start. Some soils can be more acidic, some soils can be more alkaline. That can get maybe a little bit advanced. The thing is just making sure that the soil is as close to what is desired for your plants. And you can test that out. You can go to the store, get your own testing machines. Another great way is there's a lot of DIY ways to test your soil, just using like a water bottle, a couple of Pierson, shake that, see what the components are. And that way it gives you a little understanding of where you're starting. And then you can go from there. When you're given soil, that's a little hard because you kind of expect it to be good, but if it's not growing, then there might be something going on. Either with you're not pairing the right plants with it, not enough water, something like that. But I always like to build up my soil through compost. And then if you don't have a pile like this already, you know what I mean? Because I'm kind of blessed by getting a lot of donations. But a great way is always like getting horse manure, sheep manure, cow manure, cardboard, and just doing the lasagna style. You lay down the cardboard, you pile it some greens and whatever you have access to. Put another cardboard, more greens. If you don't have cardboard, use wood chips. If you don't have wood chips, you can use medium to small size logs to fill up the compost. Say you don't have a lot of soil and you've made a really deep raised bed, you can put the cardboard down first or something along those lines. You've got rodents, you can put down a chicken wire, as Terry said, and then or you can then you can put like logs down or sticks to kind of build up that space. Lasagna style method I think is really good because then you actively kind of break down over time and get utilized over time. And couple that with some beans, couple that with the companion planting. They'll start to take care of themselves. Yeah. And then you get into bugs and all that sort of stuff. But when you do composting, it kind of helps build up a mycelium network because you're growing a fungus here, and the great thing about this fungus is that it tends to they have like natural what's the word? It's a living creature. It's naturally just protecting it. I don't know how to describe what this compost pile won't get too many other types of pathogens or too many other types of things because the fungi is growing and it'll kill off things that aren't there. But it is beneficial and works in conjunction with plants. And so when you lay it over as a new compost, you lay it over as just a soil amendment, you can get these microbes and fungi into the soil and they'll tend to like kind of become like territorial, but they'll take care of your soil. And then if you got some of the right ones, because it's not always, it's a long process to get a mycelium network. Eventually you can establish itself in your garden and kind of help distribute nutrients and water evenly. At least it depends on the plants you plant. It's a long process, but that's sort of what you're building towards. It's like this network. I think it's pretty neat. I get really into it. This is the start of my whole gardening because I was in the same boat as you. I live in a very sandy, dusty area, and I don't have the money to buy bags and bags of potting soil. So I was like, what do I have? I got a lot of horse poop, and I got a lot of soda boxes, and and then there you go. That's how I started. I just hauled buckets of water from my family's well, and now I have trees, and I grow carrots and tomatoes.
Nice.
If I had more time to go back up north, I'd grow more trees. That's what I grow. And so when you're down here, water twice a month. Water twice a week or as needed, making sure that like every plant's gonna have different water needs, but I think it's a blanket statement every other day down here is depending on this is full sun, every other day, full sun, I would be watering at least a bucket's worth depending on the size plot, and depending on your growth needs. If you want a really juicy watermelon, water as much as you can, and then you just start your compost piles. Before you know it, they'll get to this size, and you'll add it to your fields year after year. Yeah, and then with the companion planting, grow to your taste. You can substitute the melons for cucumbers. You can substitute the squash for pumpkins. You can substitute the corn for sunflowers or other stalk-like plants. You can even substitute them for sorghum. I don't know if you guys know what sorghum is.
No.
It's kind of like a sugar cane. It's like an Apache sugar cane.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so you can use that as a substitute as well. I haven't grown it before, so I'm trying to experiment with it. But it should look a bit like the amaranth. But you could chew the stalk as like, you can kind of eat it like a panda. But I got these from the White Mountain Apaches, but they can be used in addition to the sunflower, in substitute of the corn as well. So it's something that's very like stalky. And then what else can be done? Well, and then in your beds, learning to do other types of companion planting as well would be really sweet. You can couple tomatoes and peppers, couple, onions, basically anything. And then based off of what you want and desire, there's plants that go along with it. So some ant piles are just like vicious. They'll go after you,
Think I'm living on them. I'm just saying.
In which case, it depends on how bad your infestation is. Sometimes you just have to resort to chemical warfare. But you should keep things as organic as possible.
Right.
Keeping it targeted if you're going to go into that route. And then otherwise, in terms of like other integrated pest management, is making sure to, if you plant onions and garlic in your garden, they do a great job of deterring a lot of pests. And it's also delicious, And so there's some integrated pest control here where we have onions throughout the garden. If I was smarter, I'd put more onions. And so I think that's something that you guys can do if you want to have like a natural way of dealing with it. Onions and garlic can help deter those bugs, making sure that like water it and kind of like let the ants know I can't stay here in terms of your watering. So like this gets flooded all the time, so they don't really build wheels here. It's only because this side did not get a lot of irrigation. It's the furthest back. And because this pile is quite elevated and it started to dry. So that's why it hit. But when I started watering it and stirring it, it won't happen anymore. And but yeah, it depends on your infestation level.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad I answered it.
When this is ready,
Oh, okay. I mean, the best way would be sort of like you find the part that's kind of the most complete, almost done. Which is just the easiest way, is just the most earth-like. Well, this is so active right now. I can't do that. You have to wait until it cools down. I was like, as I was holding it, I was like, oh, it's hot. You have when you make it active, you have to wait for it to cool back down. So once you stirred it and everything, it's got super big and steamy, and you got it to where you want it to be. You can stir a little less, cool down. It's starting to get even colder, and then the coolest part happens is when it starts to become more like a sponge cake, and then that's when you can just put it right over your soil, or you put it on top. Put it in potting soil. What I've done up north is I would make like a lasagna bed, which is where you put cardboard, you could put like some type of greens or horse manure or something like that. I put cardboard, horse manure, and cardboard, then I put my compost, and then I covered it with regular soil. So that's how I built my beds up there. Yeah, but here this soil's been kind of, I think it's I think there's horse manure mixed into this soil and some good fertilizer, and it's been kept mended by some really strong growers. And so I'm just going to help with that amendment at the end towards maybe before winter. And this pile will start to cool down, and I'll put it back. Hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, but if you keep feeding it, it'll keep alive. And I've been able to keep a compost pile hot in the winter. Like this one time, I was tending to our horses, and it was cold. It was like there's snow out. It was freezing, and my sister was complaining. She's like, "Jay, it's too cold. What are you doing out here?" I was like, "I gotta finish this up." And then I told her, go over to the compost pile. She's like, "Why?" And I grabbed my pitchfork and cracked it open. And it was almost like we were next to a hot fire.
Jeez, that's insane.
So that's what you can do. But you can also, if you don't feed it constantly but still stir it, you can kind of keep it tame, and it'll just be cool for a long period of time. Yeah. And some people also do like a barrel method, where they use like a barrel kind of tool, and they'll put it on like a stick, what do you call it, like a spit roast kind of thing, and they'll stir it. And then there's like on the side of the barrel, there's like a part you can open possibly. That's instead of manually stirring with a pitchfork.
And then are there things you're definitely not supposed to do?
Oh yeah,
like, I'm pretty sure, right?
Keep your pile vegetarian is the main thing. Keep your pile vegetarian. Absolutely no animal proteins, no cheese, no. I mean, you could get some. Like sometimes I'll put like cardboard boxes, so like pizza boxes in there. So like you could put like a little bit of cheese, but don't put like a lot of cheese. Don't put like a lot of animal oils, or you don't put your own oils in there. So you're like napkins or smoothies. You don't want to introduce pathogens into it that might already exist from your vegetables, or even worse, you don't want to introduce animal or human pathogens. Keeping your pile vegetarian is the best thing. Whatever was wet once a plant, you return back to it. And you can put eggshells in here. That's the one thing. You can put crab shells and lobster shells, like crustaceans, but not with their meat. So that's as far as it goes vegetarian. It's pescatarian, but at most.
Okay, and then if it's all green, right? Like bananas, like a fruit.
Yeah, you can put bananas in there.
Yeah.
Bananas are like probably the easiest one. They'll be gone within the day. Put in this. But you can put other hardy things. So I got peanuts in here, but they're kind of like they're hard to decompose. So not unless you got a hot steaming pile like that. I can put like a whole sunflower stalk in here, and it'll be gone. But it depends on your pile, Keeping vegetarian is the best way to go about it, because you can add meats. It's funny. I have a guinea pig up north, and I joke around sometimes that I'll just put the guinea pig when he dies, because you can break down meats. You can break down whole bodies of animals if you wanted to. It just makes things incredibly difficult, because then it turns into a whole different pile, a whole different beast.
And then it creates where you get different bugs.
You'll get like maggots. You'll get more meat-eating bugs. You'll get bugs you don't want around. I prefer these roly-polies to what you'll invite if you input too many ones. You also get the rodents. You'll get all sorts of things that it can be done, and it does make sense at some points and some levels. Like biodigesters, I think make sense in terms of maybe inner city living or maybe more off-grid living. You can utilize it like that, but I wouldn't put anything.
Yeah, definitely.
Just besides just jokingly with guinea pig. But that's just because he's like our little garbage disposal. He eats everything. So I was like, he just belongs in there. Yeah. But that's a little bit of a quick little garden composting 101.